same kind of energy, that same kind of satisfaction, same kind of argument, that same kind of frustration, that same kind of ecstasy that I find I have in my relationships occurs in the work.
Nancy Weber is a well-known artist whose photographs have been exhibited in the United States, Europe, and the Orient. For her, as with most singles, a fascinating career is not a substitute for a close, loving relationship.
I don't want to accept the fact that I must live alone. I think I have a very interesting, exciting life, and it would be nice to have someone to share that with. It's rare to be an artist and working in that field, and to find someone that isn't totally fixated in their own career. But not very easy these days to find that kind of companionship.
While career choices exert a strong influence on the single lifestyle, sometimes unpredictable social realities can limit options and choices. Many women who postponed marriage to develop careers have found themselves caught in a marriage squeeze, with not enough eligible or appropriate men to go around. This is particularly true for black women.
You look at the jail population in America, and we see some demographics tells us that something like 50% of all the men in jail are black men. And what are their ages? Their ages are 17 to 39, the prime area of mating and establishing family.
I think when black women say that there are no black women, there are no black men out there, and there's a black shortage, they mean there are no black men of the level and the caliber that they are seeking. The higher they go up educationally, the more they're more likely to be alone. The lower she is, she may be a welfare recipient or whatever she might be, she may have a choice of 8 or 10 men.
It's presented as a problem of the black male. What's wrong with this guy? How come he can't do like the black women? How come he can't stop doing all these gangs? How come he's doing all this dope? Why is he doing all this crime? Why won't he work? How come he can't pass the test? Never mentioning that you had neglected his education, his socialization, his everything, while you brought his women into a position that further alienated her from him.
I don't think it's society's fault that many black men are not working. I think it's up to the man himself. There may not be a lot of jobs available, but there are some. It may not be what he expects to do or what he's used to doing, but there are some available, and I think it's to his advantage to get work, period. No one, is going to hand him a job.
There probably is some credence to some of the complaints that women have, and certainly I have complaints. I've had, situations that I have not been happy with, problem situations that make it very difficult sometimes for women to find companionship that is compatible on a whole range of issues or things. The whole notion of relationships and the difficulty of forming those relationships is probably just as problematic with minority women as it is with white women.
Black women are going to have to change, not lower, but change what they're looking for and what constitutes a man. See, the way we defined a man some years ago, one with a 9-to-5 job, a house in the suburbs, a 3-piece suit, that can no longer be the definition of a man, not in terms of an oppressed group of black people.
With a growing number of adults being single at certain stages in their lives, some choosing to remain single even for a lifetime, unmarried sex has become an accepted fact of life. But regardless of changes in sexual attitudes over the last 25 years, many singles still consider sex as an indication of commitment.
I think a number of men seem very afraid of commitment, which I would take to unify sexuality and continuing, loving relationship. And men might think they want that, but I don't see them making efforts in that behalf.
I think maybe women are wanting commitment earlier. Commitment being some exclusive relationship, commitment to that other person and to that relationship for some extended period of time, whatever that means. Most of us would have trouble defining commitment very distinctly.
Freedom, however, does not preclude involvement in a relationship. A recent study defined a new category of women who avoided a traditional commitment by involving themselves with married men. These women often valued independence and career over conventional domesticity, and considered a long-term affair of this sort preferable to a series of temporary relationships.
Just on a superficial level, I think it's interesting that when you're married, that women come on to you. Now, I know, somebody somewhere is going to get letters about this probably, but when I was single, I found it difficult to meet women. Much more difficult than when I was married. Probably because when I was married, I guess I was safe, as they say.
While they may offer a one-night stand or a one weekend or, an affair on the side, there's certainly no future in it. And sometimes that's attractive in the sense that it's safe. And it can be, infatuation. You can be totally infatuated, and that it allows you to play out the good part of a relationship without having to answer to the responsible part of the relationship. And indeed, it can be that syndrome of no, don't touch, or a sense that of adventure, and so you go off and in the long run you pay a very high price, because if you get emotionally involved, which invariably you do, then you're going to be the loser, and there's no future in it. Or you may break up a marriage, which is no fun either.
Those singles who seem satisfied with their lives are generally those who can accept the fact that being alone is often a roller coaster ride, which combines periods of excitement and independence with periods of loneliness.
I enjoyed being by myself. I wasn't alone. I didn't feel like I was alone, And it was a time for me to do a lot of stuff that I wasn't able to do when I was married. I remember I knew I was divorced when I walked into a movie house one night by myself to see a movie that I knew that she would never have gone to see, and I automatically went to sit where we would normally sit, and I thought, wait a minute, I don't have to sit here. I can sit where I always like. I want to sit, I like to sit like in the fourth row. And that was like the first time I really realized, wait, I don't have any responsibility, to anyone else but myself.
I'm young enough right now where I like being single, but then again, there's times when I'm like lonely and I wish I had someone I could be with.
During the holidays, I just prefer to be with someone special.
Sometimes I get lonely when I'm with my friends, and it's simply lonely for a relationship that I don't have anymore, or for what I thought it could have been in the future, and it's not, because it's not there.
I think I felt lonelier when I was with someone than when I've been alone. I mean, you can feel melancholy. Melancholy is not a bad feeling. I mean, sometimes it's kind of a satisfying feeling to have. It's part of your range of emotions. It's interesting to explore.
What do I do about being lonely? Sometimes I sit around and wallow in it and enjoy feeling sorry for myself. I think everybody does that once in a while. And sometimes I call up a friend and go out and do something with that friend. Sometimes I go out by myself. Sometimes I sit around and read.
I have a few very, very close friends that I can talk to about anything. And then there's my father. We've gotten very closely throughout the years. And then there's my sister. She's experienced the same things I've experienced. So she knows, and we can talk about it.
When I get lonesome, I usually just get out the phone book and start calling people. And I find someone I can talk to for a while, and most likely end up going over to their house or having them come over, and we just, pretty much console each other. That's what friends are for.
My women friends and we gossip sometimes and hoot and holler and so on and so forth. And that's just fantastic. It's wonderful, wonderful therapy. We'll get together and hang out at a club, and since they look wonderful, and I'm the oldest among the three of them, when we walk into a place, we turn heads, and it's great. It's just great.
For singles who are not involved in a romantic relationship, loneliness is minimized by a network of friends and job-related relationships that can fill the gap left by traditional family structures.
I have a job that brings me into contact with 20, 30, 40, 50 people a day, and I have relationships with all of those people to some degree. I don't mean romantic, I mean, personal relationships. I'm investing in them, they're investing in me. There's expectations, there's commitment between myself and those people that I work with, even extending as far as my audience. As I direct theater, and I have an audience that comes to see the work that we all make. Sometimes I really feel that the relationships provide me some of the sustenance that a traditional monogamous one-on-one relationship provides for people.
When I look at the relationships that fill my life, I can't possibly think of myself as a single person because my life is so filled with people and relationships that are nourishing and life-sustaining to me. Now, if you're asking me, can I contemplate or do I contemplate making one of those relationships that we have all agreed are a relationship? Yes, certainly.
Although outsiders may believe that singles are on a never-ending adventure of meeting new people and developing new relationships, most singles indicate that it's not all that easy.
To put myself in the situation, which I have done, in the single bar or dance hall situation is just so depressing because usually these places reek with alienation, and who needs it? You don't. It's worse than almost anything.
Yes, you get all dressed up, you go to the clubs, and the gentlemen are on one side standing against the wall, dressed very nicely with drinks in their hands, and you have ladies on the other side sitting down, waiting to be asked to dance. There's like a code of you wait for the gentleman to ask you to dance. And nowadays, I guess the woman has to ask the man to dance, if she wants to dance. Because I've sat 4 hours and not danced one time at a club.
You lose track of what you've done, how to meet people, how to get involved with other people. You have to relearn it again.
I don't have any kind of good promiscuous skills. I hate bars. I don't like to take my clothes off in front of strangers. I really am one of these born girlfriends, and so I found that I either wanted to be by myself or I was used to being close to somebody, so I essentially hung out with friends or extremely unsuitable people I got along with well.
I've met a lot of really nice guys, men that I'd be real happy to have coffee with and to get to know, but I haven't met anybody that's been exciting on a romantic level to me, and neither has my friend. And I find that disheartening because I don't know how I'm going to meet the man of my dreams, whoever he is.
Living in the singles world tends to be transitory, as most singles eventually marry. While the single life may have its advantages, for most people there is still a need to share one's life on an intimate level with someone else.
I would like to get married, but I don't have a rabid, burning desire. In other words, I'm not desperate. I'm not desperate, you know.
Yeah.
I remember in high school saying to myself that my life would not be typical. I would not lead a so-called typical life. And I haven't, really. I think I've been very fortunate, and I'm still very fortunate. And I feel basically very good about myself.
I would much rather be involved in a meaningful relationship. I think it's very important for me as a person to share things intimately with someone I care about. I feel that as a great lack. When I come home and I've had a success, I want to be able to share it with somebody. There are the kinds of secrets and special times that I just want to have somebody who I can depend on, who I know loves me and who I love. So it's not really a choice to be single.
I really do want to settle down. And as Aaron's gotten older, he's almost 19 now, he's not going to be around forever. And I now definitely am thinking that I'd like to settle down, even have another, quote, have another family. You know, do it not right this time, but do it differently. Do it as a better provider and some more mature and more able to devote time and knowing what I know now.
And yet, other singles may remain alone because of the limitations they envision in a permanent relationship. For these people, the rewards of a relationship are overshadowed by the fear of losing control over one's activities, time, social contacts, and assets.
I think one of the major drives in human nature is to have control over your life. But when I ask myself if I'm happier with a man or without, I generally find myself much happier without, because I don't have to answer to anyone. I don't have to feel a stress factor as to whether I'm pleasing, whether I'm doing right. So I think that I'm choosing not to be married.
Right now, you've caught me at a time where I'm really trying to be very rational and clear about coming to terms with the fact that I do enjoy, to a great degree, a lot of the life I lead. And it does give me great satisfaction. And I'm sort of dealing with the issue of, Sam, it's okay not to be married, and it's okay not to have a mate all the time. And that actually there's a lot of great opportunities, and I'm not alone, I'm not lacking something.
Society has come a long way in accepting the single life as a legitimate lifestyle choice. And life for singles has certainly changed in the last few years. Housing situations have improved. Employment opportunities for women have increased and expanded. And yet, there is still a lot of misunderstanding about what it means to be single. Singles are often stereotyped as either carefree people constantly moving from one exciting relationship to another, or at the opposite extreme, as depressed and bitter individuals who spend endless nights alone. The truth lies somewhere in between. Given the diversity of the single lifestyle, some singles live alone, others live with roommates or with their families of origin. Some want to marry eventually, others plan never to marry, and still others live together without legalizing their relationship. Some are affluent, others barely get by. Some are young, but many are middle-aged or old. Some are clearly happy and content, others are miserable and lonely. And while being single may last for a short time or a lifetime, what is important to bear in mind is that being single is not always a matter of chance or lost opportunity. In the best of circumstances, it's a matter of choice.
whose contributors include Will Miller and Lynn McGuire, Roger and Carolyn Horchow, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, now in its 25th year, the Ford Foundation, the Richard and Rhoda Goldman Fund, and the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation to enhance public understanding of the role of technology in society.
Doing in the relationship.
Actually, almost everyone I went out with a real positive attitude. This may be the one. I mean, I really missed having a nice relationship, a long-standing relationship, close relationship with someone. And I'd go with this, but usually I'd meet the person, and after a couple dates, I had the SNB, you know, she's nice, but. And there was something. And sometimes it was very intangible. Other times it was, you know, I don't like her shoes. When I first saw Julie, I mean, she was a beautiful woman to me, and I reacted to that. When I spoke to her later at 4 in the morning at the party,
she then fulfilled further criteria, which was she was a soft-spoken, nice person, intelligent, had a career.
You know, I liked what he did for a living. I liked how he looked, and I thought he was a funny guy and all those things I was looking for, so that's why I didn't really have any doubts that way.
When Don and I started to go out, almost from the very beginning, I mean, literally the first time we went out, first time we almost met each other, we just seemed to fit. There was something there on lots of different levels. It just felt right. I had no interest in seeing other people.
Just the personalities, the meshing of our personalities. I felt like we had known each other for years when in reality we'd only been going out for a few months.
I felt that way too. It was very effortless.
Yeah.
There was a sense of naturalness to it.
What attracted me to Chris was he was just real fun-loving and lots of fun to be around. And he's really different and kind of unpredictable. And it was just always, he was just always amusing, and I just never knew what would happen. And just a real fun guy here. I think that's the first thing that attracted to me.
The traditional marital exchange is related to sex roles. Men have offered their status, economic power, and their role as protector in trade for a woman's physical attractiveness, nurturing, childbearing, and housekeeping abilities. But as women enter careers and become more economically independent, the terms of bargaining change.
It's very difficult for women in the sense that many men still want traditional women. And many of the women are moving away from traditional in the sense of being more career-oriented, being quite independent in their lives, making their own decisions, wanting to make their own decisions, wanting to have more power and more control in their relationship.
I think women really do have this perfectionist program in them, you know, that if I'm perfect, I'll get a guy. And perfect used to be, you know, having nice hairdo and, you know, wearing the right sweater and matching shoes. And now perfect is like a $100,000 a year job and a gold American Express card.
Not everyone who enters the marriage market is available or of interest to others who are looking for a mate. Although we are theoretically free to choose any partner we want, we tend to choose partners of the same class, racial, and educational backgrounds. For each shopper, there is an appropriate pool of eligibles, a group of individuals who, by virtue of their background or birth, are considered most likely to make compatible marriage partners.
Relationships that are happy in that just ebullient, free sense that we mean when we say people are happy together, have to do with the fact that people can always turn to something that delights both of them, that they have that shared experience of loving something together and of mirroring each other's delight in that.
The fact that we're two individuals going in two different directions, but that we still like the same thing, is what makes it so wonderful. We love the desert, we love backpacking, we love the mountains.
We had read the same books, and we shared kind of the love of reading, which was nice. 'Cause you don't find that in everybody nowadays, I think. And on top of that, we both talked about, I think, traveling a lot and doing things and just going out and doing things in San Diego and seeing what San Diego had to offer. And that interested me and Carol. I know that. I know we had that in common.
Just the circle of friends we have that, you know, we mix in and we have fun in, and we can share a lot of things in the culture, in the language, in the food, and so on, that if I, you know, married someone American, that part would be totally lost. And, you know, I would always feel that there's something missing.
While some people naturally seek out partners who share their values, others are just as strongly drawn to those whose backgrounds are very different.
I worked with a couple once who were Christian and Jew, not seriously religiously Christian or Jew, but that was their cultural heritage. She had always had a Christmas tree. He had never had one. And when they got married, she put up her Christmas tree. She was fine with it. He was fine with it. They had a child. All of a sudden, this cannot be in our house because it will seduce our child away from his Jewish heritage. And they had decided to raise the child Jewish. The woman had a complete fit
it was run for the divorce court, or in this case, the marriage counselor, because she couldn't understand how what had been okay before the child was not okay now.
The fact that Glenn is from a Jewish background, I'm from a Catholic background, really isn't an issue except when we do talk about having children.
I usually don't think that the difference in background, whatever differences there are between Donna and me, are that important.
We both think it's important to give the children some kind of religious background, though neither of us is very religious, and I certainly don't want my child to end up in 12 years of Catholic school, going to church on Sunday and confession and communion and all this stuff. But I don't think that Glenn feels strongly that they should be raised Jewish either, but it's still a dilemma to us. We still haven't figured it out. And it comes up whenever we talk about having kids, and it's something that at that point I guess we'll have to resolve.
Regardless of what our attitudes are about religion, there's a world out there that has attitudes and will put value judgments on us and what we do with our children. And you know, the idea is to do a little bit of both, that this child will be brought up knowing it has Jewish and Catholic roots. And hopefully that'll be practical. We'll find out.
There's some evidence to suggest that marriage between people who are not alike has become more common in recent years. The idea of marriage between those of different racial backgrounds, for example, is not considered as unusual as it once was. One couple, considering marriage, talk about introducing each other to their families.
He came to pick me up at my house, and I introduced my parents to him. I didn't feel that they were going to have any problems with it.
I think my mother was a little bit surprised.
I remember when we got to know them better, they did start asking questions here and there.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Yeah, it was more or less of
how are you going to deal with
right.
these type of situations? Are you prepared?
Barbara, the mother of an interracial couple, talks of the difficulties she has experienced.
I was angry that I wouldn't have this beautiful little blonde grandchild. And I learned from that after going to interracial groups that everyone is prejudiced. It's just what you do with it. My daughter is married to a black man. She has a child with this man. And there's no more closets for me. I'm sick of it. You know, I'm tired of hiding in the closet. And I don't want other people to have to do that. It's ridiculous.
The various ways people meet and get to know one another fall into the general category of dating. During teenage years, dating is primarily a way to have a good time. As people get older, it begins to get more complicated.
It's not like dating. Like my mother used to have, you know, I used to go out with this guy and this guy and this guy sometimes and this guy sometimes. And it was like frivolous. And now it's serious. You have one boyfriend, one girlfriend.
We see each other all the time. It's not like in high school you see somebody for, maybe at class, 1 class, 2 classes, maybe 3 classes. But here it's like every day, most of the day, we're with each other. And it seems like there's more freedom. Like the parental role is a lot less than it was when we were living at home. And it's just a lot better. It's a more freer, more mature relationship or atmosphere about the relationship.
My grandmother, she really, can't believe that girls actually call me. She can't believe, she says, in my day, girls never called. They sat and waited by the phone.
It's just like you go to parties with your friends, or if you go out with a guy, it's with more like other people. It's not just we're going out to dinner or anything. That doesn't really happen that much.
It's not very formal.
I think people should date 3 or 4 or 5 different people at once. And that way they can find out who or what kind of person they want to have eventually as a partner.
I think you learn a lot about yourself, too. Not only the other person, but things that you never knew about yourself, or like little quirks that you had that they can't stand.
It's not always easy to be part of an emerging couple relationship. Often there is confusion or uncertainty about what the rules are, especially if the issues revolve around money or sex.
I've run into a few people that I've met lately and just say, like, why should you pay for the whole thing? I'll pay for half, It blew my mind. I said, you don't want me to pay for it all? And she said, no, here's my half. And I just went, whoa. what are you doing Friday?
You know, it goes down to real simple issues. Like I was driving down the street the other day and I was thinking, you know, you try not to economically oppress men. For instance, when a man calls me up and asks me out to dinner, sometimes I say, well, look, I can't afford to go. And then if they say that they're paying, I'll say that's fine. But I don't always want to assume that the male is always paying, because I don't buy into that. But unfortunately, most men interpret that as, gee, she's really strong. She doesn't need anybody.
The guy who's always grabbing the check and grabbing the check and grabbing the check is the same guy who turns around 3 months down the road and goes, what are you doing for me?
I think a lot of the responsibility for sexual expectations due to money rests on the woman, since it's accepted that women will use men for their money. And it's true. Like I played a game of pool with this guy, and he said, you know, he beat me. He barely beat me. But he said, you know, you didn't realize that I won sexual favors from you for beating you. And I said, really? I said, well, when I feel like doing you a favor, I'll give you a call. You know, I mean, that is just garbage. It really is.
The world has changed. A guy takes you out now, it's like, what is he expecting? I'm not ready to go that far, you know, so I'm sitting up there still playing like in high school and college. You know, you keep your dress down and all this stuff. That's reality. But a man now who's been out there like the men and who are in the financial position that the guys that would be hitting on me or the social class, they know how to rap, as they say. They know how to close deals. They know how to close the bed, and I'm frightened.
Well, first of all, you don't go on a date unless there's sexual tension. I mean, you obviously go on a date because you're interested in the person physically. I mean, otherwise, why bother? I mean, why shop? Why go through all that? Why buy all those new clothes and shave your legs if there's no sexual tension?
In recent years, Dr. Warren Farrell has established workshops which allow men and women to experience the stress of the dating ritual from the perspective of the opposite sex.
And the way I do that is to ask in my workshops for each sex not to spend time blaming the other sex, rather for each sex to spend time emotionally experiencing what the other sex goes through.
Do you ever go to Aspen or out of town?
I'd like to, but
do you have plans?
I just met you.
Well, this would be a way for you to get to know me a little bit better.
Many women, because they don't initiate the contact with the man that they would prefer to have contact with, end up going out with their 14th choice, marrying sometimes their 85th choice. Now that's a sad statement. The way it can get better for women is for women to learn to share some of the risk-taking that men do, and the way men can begin to understand what women go through is to walk a mile in women's moccasins as well.
A courtship process which often allows partners to get to know each other even better is cohabitation. While there have always been unmarried couples who have chosen to live together, the growing acceptance of cohabitation among the working and middle classes in our society is a fairly recent development.
There used to be rules. I mean, first you were introduced to somebody, then you knew them for a while, and you courted them, and then you asked for their hand, and then you got engaged, and then you got married, and so on and so forth. Now there's all kinds of things that happen. Any combination of those things, with or without rings, with or without getting married.
But I think what was going on in my head at the time was that it was a really big jump to go from dating someone, even though we were spending most of our time together, to marriage. And living together, while I didn't expect to learn anything that I didn't know, that anything really surprising would come up, I think it was kind of like a logical, or it felt like a logical kind of transition period to move into the marriage.
I wanted to know, could we live together? How would we get along day in and day out? And I do remember about a week after we were living together, I think I just felt really closed in, and I got really uptight, and something silly happened. I don't remember. I think I was studying, and I don't remember what
I told you
said.
how to call your sister.
Oh yeah, you said, and I had an exam coming up, and Glenn said you got to call your sister, and I just blew off the handle. It had nothing to do with really what was happening then. It had to do with this feeling of being closed in, and I grabbed the bag, went running out the door, going, I'm never coming back. But I did.
I never wanted to do it. In fact, that was a strong decision that I had made years and years ago. I think it was because my parents were against it and society's against it, and
Just the term shacking up.
yeah, I don't like
They seem
that.
to be, and,
I don't
and the
like
way
that.
the parents, I remember my parents talking about it too, the neighbor down the block, look at that, shacking up with someone, you know, that was a stigma, not a very good connotation. With me, and I think it was probably passed down from my brothers and sisters and from what I heard was, you really have to get to know someone. And the way to get to know them is to live with them, and that's like the acid test. Do it. And, you know, if you don't like it, you're out of there. You move out. And, you know, it doesn't really prove anything. I mean, the idea that you can just, when something goes wrong, you can say, hey, I'm out of here, that just doesn't happen. Even if you keep separate finances and things, because there's the love, it's a typical relationship. And it's even a little bit harder because you have to move the furniture and one person gets to stay. So it's actually, to me, it's turned out that it's much more of a commitment.
I've never had any dream to get married. I mean, that wasn't a dream of mine. I don't see any need to get married now. I don't feel that my commitment is any less because of that.
To me, personally, I feel that commitment without that. And it's not as if I really feel that I never would do it. I don't have anything against it. I just don't really feel any need for it.
In many instances, dating or even living together do not lead to marriage. Couples reconsider their commitment to each other and decide to go their separate ways. Often, the breakup of a serious relationship can be as painful as a divorce.
Over and over, we see that relationships don't last a lifetime. We break our vows. We're troubled to observe that we break our vows. But we do this because, in fact, new issues of development come up for us, and it may well be that the partner who was appropriate for one phase of development is no longer appropriate as we move into a different phase of development.
Well, there are a lot of crazy relationships that should end. Definition of a crazy relationship is a crazy person in a relationship with anybody else. Has to be crazy. Relationship is as strong as the weakest person, not as strong as the strongest person.
I felt very close to this person, and as it turns out, we broke up, you know, so that kind of hurt me. That's one of the reasons I don't like to get really close to people, is because unless we get married or something like that, I feel like it's fruitless, because you're just going to end up getting hurt.
I guess one of the hardest things is regret. You know, because I've never regretted anything I've ever done. And I regretted that. I regretted leaving.
And it's going to hurt for a while, you know that, so don't feel like it. You have to feel better right away, and it isn't the end of the world. It will get better, but don't, I talk to myself and say, yeah, you feel miserable, so go ahead and feel miserable.
There was also, of course, for me, a lot of relief, because I had been living a lie for a long time, trying to hold together something that just wasn't working anymore. And there was a lot of relief in being able to say, I'm free with that.
Don't want to get involved again, because I don't know if I could actually bother telling someone about my life and let them know me well enough again. You know, it's like there's a limit to how many times you're willing to do that.
I had to work through all that stuff. That's when it's hard to love someone. That's the really true test, I think. Is when do you love them? When they stop sleeping with you, when they stop being your significant other, they don't call you on your birthdays, they're not there for your Christmas, they're not there for you in the way that you want to be, you want them to be, and yet you still love them.
The process of breaking up is not just the end, it's the beginning of a new cycle and the search to fulfill an almost insatiable need to form an intimate partnership. So we return to the marketplace, testing our skills, checking what's available, considering new options, rejecting others. And whether we are at a produce market or the more important marriage market, our goal is the same: to find the best we possibly can.
just the way it goes.